I am here today without my sidekick Nikki to help me with this edit, so I'm going to be fielding questions with my little iPad that's below the screen here. But yeah, welcome. We're going to be doing a live edit today with all of the different presets. So normally we do a live edit focused around one of the packs, and this one's kind of a free-for-all. We're going to kind of go through a little bit of every pack. Thank you for sending in images. I really appreciate it. I picked 13 photos here to edit with, and they were really interesting. So yeah, I'm just really excited, and we're going to get started here in just a second. So let's see if we have any comments. Okay, hey Mastin Liang, welcome. A few things before I start. I'm going to start in like 30 seconds, but we've got one of our two big sales for the year is happening right now between May 18th and May 22nd. We're having 25% off all of our different packs. We only have 2 sales per year. So if you've been on the fence or you're considering using Mastin Labs for this season, now is the time to do it. If you don't do it right now or the next like 2 or 3 days, then you're just going to be stuck with full price until like the middle of winter, well after, if you're a wedding photographer, well after wedding photography season. We're also working on a Fuji push pack as well. So that'll be coming out hopefully not too long from now. No promises, but it has to be perfect before I feel that it's ready to be released. So we're working on that, and that'll be really cool too. Welcome, Maxime Plaisant. Glad to have you with us. Okay, we're at 47 people. Let's start here in like 15 seconds. I'm going to drink my little espresso shot here, and then we'll get started. All right. I am ready. Which Keurig? That is actually from an actual espresso machine. So on the other side of this wall here, I've got like an Italian espresso machine that we use like all the time. So probably too much. It's probably not healthy. All right. So Kaylee Wiltbank just joined us. Cool. I'm going to try not to miss any questions here. Okay. So let me see what we got here. Got a few questions. Ryan asked, do you mix and match film looks during a wedding? I wouldn't, personally. If I was shooting film or digital, I would keep it all one look. You're going to be far better off defining your style if you are one look and not like a bunch of different looks kind of patchwork together. So I would say definitely not. I would say in general, you want to be really, really... Nahal, you can't hear me? Can you hear me? Can anyone else hear me? You're freaking me out. Okay, someone comment and say, hey, I can hear you. All right, I can't continue until someone lets me know if it's working. So Jess says, okay, thank you. And Jose Rastaman, the person with the coolest name ever, they can hear me. So we're just gonna go. All right, so as I was saying, no, don't. I'd recommend not mixing more than 2 different looks in a wedding or even across all of your work. There's nothing to be gained by being like okay at a lot of different looks. You really want to decide like what film or digital look really defines your voice and what you enjoy and what feels right. And I recommend just keeping it to like 1 color look, maybe 2 color looks, and a black and white look that you like. But do whatever you want. You're a photographer, and you'll figure it out as you go in your career. Okay, so we've got. Yeah, sorry, Nahal. I would just like disconnect and reconnect if you can't hear us. I'll be going for a little while, so you won't miss anything. And you can watch this. Oh, everybody, you can watch this later too. We'll be posting it in the Mastin Labs community, so you can watch it as many times as you want. Okay, anyway, so we're going to start now. Thank you, Jessica Poole, for sending in this photo. She requested that I use Portrait Pushed on it, so let me open that up real quick. Great photo. And I'm just going to kind of work my way down through the pushed film pack because it's our newest one, and I want you to kind of see the differences there are between the different looks. So this is Portrait 160 plus one. As you can see, it's very it has a lot of contrast, but that is how all push film is. That's actually what happens with push film, is that you're kind of like crushing the blacks, like the dark colors in the photo, and then overdeveloping the film and chemistry actually increases the midtones and highlights. But by keeping the dark points low and everything else going high, that is contrast. So you get more contrast. The colors also shift a bit too. So comparing this to like the original Portrait 160, the original one would look much flatter because it's not pushed. So I just applied that. I would personally warm it up just a tiny bit, and I would, if you wanted a kind of a light and airy push look, I would go up in exposure, what I just did, about 0.35. And in this photo, at least on my end on the computer, it looks perfect. Like the highlights are not blown out. It might look a little bit blown out looking at it through Facebook, but if you're even worried about that, you can always use like Highlight Soft, and that just kind of gently brings the highlights down. So this looks super, super nice, actually. Portrait 160 plus one, and then plus Highlight Soft, a little bump in exposure. I'm going to then do, so here's Portrait 160 plus two. You get a little more of the red and brown in the shadows. You can see it mostly like, I'll go back and forth so you can see, but. So this is Portrait 160 plus one, and then here it is with plus two. And you see that there's like a little bit of a buildup of red and brown in the shadows, like around his hand and under his chin, and especially over here in the trees. And that happens from, pushing a film 2 stops. Okay. So, looks like everybody can hear me. I just want to check everything's working before we go any further. Nahal freaked me out with not being able to hear me. Okay, so we'll work our way down. Here's Portrait 400 plus one. I personally love Portrait 400 plus one or plus two. Any of the Portrait 400s, that's what I use. I also live in Seattle where it's cloudy, and all of the Portrait films have a lot more warmth to them than like the Fujicolor films. So at least for me, it's great, great film stock for where I live. So that's Portrait 400 plus one. Show you a little before and after. So this is no preset, just straight out of camera, and that's Portrait 400 plus one. And again, I would probably add Highlight Soft. So if I break down this edit from beginning to end with any of these presets, it's literally apply the preset, small change in temperature, bump up the exposure a tiny bit, and then all soft, or Highlight Soft. So hardly any adjustments. All right, thank you, Karina, for letting me know that you can hear me. That's great. Okay, so moving on, we'll do one more while we're here. So this is like our most extreme look, because we're not really into kind of the heavy-duty looks that are out there right now. Where our goal is just to have everything look like film. That's the only thing we answer to. And in light of that, Portrait 800 push 2 stops is the closest we get to like Wild and Crazy, because that film shifts quite a bit all the way across lows, midtones, and highlights. So this is Portrait 800 plus 2, quite a bit different than, say, like Portrait 400, which is a lot more natural. All right, so thank you, Jessica. I'm going to move on now to, let's do this landscape here. This looks like, I don't know, I thought maybe it was like something at Disneyland or something, but maybe it's a real like mining town. I'm not sure, but anyway, it's cool, a little landscape. This is by John Coop, and he wanted me to use one of the regular Fuji presets on it. So let me find that real quick. This is a Canon file. All right, Fuji, there it is. Okay, so I'm just going to start with Fuji 400H, just the regular one. So that's applying it. I would do lens correction on this image. It's with a 24mm lens, so pretty distorted. There's kind of no way around that. So the first few things I would do would be to apply the preset, do lens correction so that I can really see like the tones all the way across the image really clearly. And then I'm going to warm it up a little bit. It seems a little bit cool. And it looks a little bit magenta. So I'm going to actually add green just a tiny bit. That was like 5 points of green maybe. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop a graduated neutral density filter on it. So if I was shooting landscape with a film camera or even a digital camera, and I had the time and the wherewithal, I would attach a neutral density filter to the front of my camera. And what it does is it darkens the sky or whatever direction you want it to come in on this glass filter. So it goes from dark to clear. And in Lightroom, you do the same with this rectangular tool here. So I'm just dropping it down to kind of balance out the sky a little bit. And that'll actually let me increase the exposure just a tiny bit more. But anyway, there's that. I would also, I'm not a big fan of 35mm vertical, so I personally would crop it to 4:3, which is more of like a medium format look. And there you go. Let me show you the before and after. So this is before, and that is after. So thank you so much, John, for sending it in. I'm also going to do Fuji 160 NS on this. So Fuji 160 NS is like one of the more saturated films that Fuji makes. Pro 400H, like their 400H line, that's really for a super light kind of pastel look. When I used to shoot a lot of landscapes, I liked more saturated looks. So let's try it 160 NS. Yeah, I think that looks better. And then I'll bring down the exposure just a tiny bit and the temperature just a tiny bit. So that's a totally different edit than the one before. I think it looks better actually. So so this is before and after. Okay, I'm going to answer a question here real quick before I move on to this next photo. Jose Rastaman, best name ever, asks, do I need to adjust my picture setting in my camera? The answer is no, you don't. Because we're working with RAW files, and RAW files are the actual like raw data hitting the sensor in the camera. A picture style in a camera is telling the camera how to process that photo into a JPEG. So if you're shooting JPEGs, yes, the picture style is really important. Because that's going to kind of set the base for your JPEG, but we don't shoot JPEG. We only shoot RAW, so that's what's important here. So no, picture style will not affect it at all. Okay, any more questions? We're going to move on. Paula asks, can you edit an image with Portra? Yes, we're going to be editing images with all kinds of stuff, so just hang in there and we'll get to it. So Ispan Lantos sent us this photo and wants me to edit it with Fuji 400H. No problem. So here's 400H. That's just applying the base preset. These presets are not like a one-click, does everything for you, and makes you like a famous photographer. You have to actually adjust temperature, tint, and exposure. But this is going to be easy. So this is just 400H. I applied that. I'm going to just increase the temperature till it looks about, right. One thing I kind of really zone in on, like with my eyes, when I'm trying to figure out the right temperature is I look at neutrals. So like I'm assuming that his suit is a neutral color, and I know that when I get that color fairly neutral, that I am in the ballpark of the right temperature. So I'll go back just one step. So that's like shot in camera, way too cool because they're in the shade. So the color temperature is 5250 is what the white balance was straight out of camera, and that's way too cool for shade. So I'm just gonna increase the temperature, like I said, till the suit warms up. yeah, to like, I don't know. Yeah, about there. Looks good. They look maybe just a tiny bit too magenta. Maybe I'm gonna just drop the tint down just a tiny bit, like a couple points. And I think I can go up in temperature again, just a tiny bit. And yeah, just a tiny bit in exposure. So I'm doing very, very small adjustments. And then from here, well, I don't know, kind of the popular thing, I guess, right now is to do like all soft. All soft comes from the Fuji Frontier scanner, which these presets are based off of. And all soft means that you are increasing shadow detail and highlight detail. So if you were to take all soft and like go like way overboard, you would get HDR, which is like high dynamic range, which I personally don't care for. But all soft is like a very gentle version of this that looks really nice with photos like this. So this is just standard Fuji 400H. Like if you scanned it, it would look like this. And then if you were to hit the all soft key on the scanner, it would soften the image out. So it's kind of like whatever you prefer. Both look nice though. It did bring back a lot of detail in the dress. So if you look down in here, so that's with all soft, and that's without. I kind of like an image with a little more pop, so I would actually just leave it standard and just go and grab a adjustment brush with a, put it at like a negative exposure and just like pop it on the dress just a few times, just to kind of knock it down. Whoops, and bring in that detail. All right, so that's my preference. All soft is kind of like the hotness right now, so probably a lot of people would choose that. But so this is straight out of camera, and then this is the edit. So really cool photo. Thank you for sending it in. See, you have any more questions here? So Karina asked, could you suggest what are the best presets for indoor pictures? Ah, man, depending on the light. I mean, if you're in just really bad light, I know this sounds like a real cop-out, but I would just go black and white. There's no, man, I wish I had some really crappy indoor lighting photos in the set, and I don't. I do in some previous videos. You can see some really bad indoor lighting. But in general, you have to just be really careful with the white balance. You have to cool it down a lot to deal with tungsten light. And then there's only a limit to how good a color you can get in bad light. I mean, it's like coding. Garbage in, garbage out. So if it's garbage in, like you're just in a really crappy situation, it's going to be garbage out. You can't polish a turd into this beautiful crystal rose or whatever. I mean, it's just not going to happen. It's kind of a crude way of saying it, but it's the truth. For example, the light here is like amazing, and you can see, that's a super easy edit. But indoor in general, I don't know. All of them will work great, but black and white takes the least amount of effort, I would say. Let me see if I got any more questions here real quick. So Lindsay asks, when shooting, do you underexpose because it's digital, or do you expose properly? Which is better for using these presets? I would say you want to expose normally. The magic of these, and I think I don't want to sound angry or anything, but I've answered this question so many times. I should put it in a banner across the website, but the way that you expose in camera makes zero difference in the final look of the image. You're just setting kind of a starting point for your edit. So I recommend just shooting normal because you'll be closer to a normal starting point when you edit. It's less slider work. But if I was to show you an image shot like, with a modern DSLR, like 3 stops under, 2 stops under the correct exposure and like 1 stop over, and I edited them all together, they would look identical once they're adjusted in Lightroom. So it does not matter. What matters is the light that you're actually shooting in. So like this light is really nice, okay? Let's find light that's not nice. I'll get to it later, but this light is not that nice. I'll edit this photo in a minute, but this is tricky lighting. This light is never, ever, ever, ever going to look like this. It's just not possible. You could just like dump a super heavy, crappy filter on like an Instagram filter or whatever, and you could smother this image so much that you think it looks like this image, but it doesn't, and it will never look that way because you can't substitute bad light for good light in any editing program. Anyway, that is the photographer's journey. You have to learn how to see light, and there's no way around it. Okay, here we go. One more question, and I'll move on. Do you typically shoot in auto white balance, Jacqueline asks? I recommend just shooting, like if it's daytime, like if you're in daylight, shoot with daylight white balance. If it's cloudy, shoot with a cloudy white balance. That's the best. There are some photographers like Jeremy Chow, who's extremely talented, who likes to shoot at 6,000 Kelvin, so like a special Kelvin setting, because that's where he ends up the way he edits or what he likes in Lightroom. So it's kind of like a little shortcut, but it won't actually make any difference in your photo because it's a raw file. You can change it to whatever you want after the fact. So Jennifer asked, can you adjust presets after you use them, like if you wanted all soft but not as much? Yeah, you can adjust all soft. You just have to know what it's doing and then back it off over on the side here. I'll do a real quick edit here. So this is from Melissa Toyi. Thank you for sending it in. She wanted me to use Fuji, so I'm just going to use Fuji 400H again. So that's one click. This image is too cool. I mean, it's a cool image, but temperature-wise, it's too cool. So I'm going to warm it up just a little bit. That's a little too much. Just a tad. And then I noticed as I warmed it up, if I look at her skin, they're a little bit too magenta. Even if you look at like his suit, it's starting to kind of turn purple. So I'm going to back off on the magenta here. Just slide the tint slider around until I get rid of that kind of cast. So it wasn't much. It went from +2 to -11. It's like a tiny adjustment, but it makes a huge difference. So this is without the tint adjustment, and this is with it. So we're getting to more of a neutral, nice looking image. The next thing I'm going to do is increase the exposure. And then I'm going to use, this could use all soft because there's a lot of detail missing in the sky and in her dress. So I'll just hit all soft. Kind of brings everything back. I'm actually going to go down in exposure a little bit. I think all soft kind of really evened it out in a nice way. And then that question about can you adjust all soft? So I applied all soft. It affects the highlight, shadow, whites, and blacks area over here. If you wanted to not have it be so strong, you could just, let me just reset it. See how those changed over there? Just kind of remember where they were and where they go to, and you could back it off. But I wouldn't do it because these are actually set to how the scanner would do all soft, for example, so you're immediately like not accurate anymore, if that matters to you. Okay, back to the image. Did a few small adjustments, all soft. This image is kind of lacking in contrast in general. Let me see, it was shot at f2.5, so like the more wide open your lens is, like the smaller that number, the less contrast a lens will have, and that goes for every lens. Super well-made lens will have a lot of contrast, even wide open, but even the very best have less. So one thing you could do is just go to the tone curve and pull in the end, or so you hit the J key, and then that lets you see if there's something hitting white or total black. But you go to the tone curve and pull it in from the side until you see blue appear. That blue is actually black. So I'm going to turn off, I'm going to hit J again to turn the warnings off. And now you can see like under here, those areas are now black. So now we've got like a black point. This is like probably the most work you have to do with Mastin Labs is to occasionally pull in the tone curve. You shouldn't have to ever like dive down into HSL or any of the stuff down here. You just leave it alone. In fact, I'm going to just close these up because you don't need any of these things down here at all. You should just live right here at the top. Anyway, okay, so here is the we get to the before. So there's the before image, and here is the after image with Fuji 400H. Thank you, Melissa, for sending that in. It was really cool. Okay, I'm going to answer 2 more questions here and move on to the next photo. Damian McCarthy asks, best presets for Irish weather, dull and overcast. I don't know. I mean, I would say either the Portrait pack or the Portrait Push pack. That's my recommendation. If you lived in like Southern California, then you can jump on the Fuji 400H train with everybody else because it looks super nice and not kind of light. Or if you're out in the desert, you know, or Palm Springs or whatever. But yeah, I mean, Ireland is just basically like Seattle. I've been to Kilkenny and some other places there. Pretty identical. A lot of very not tan people. So yeah, I would say that any of the portrait stuff would be great. Okay, let me see here. Oh boy, gosh, so many questions. Paula Coleman asks, what's the difference between Portrait and Fuji pack? I could go on about that for an hour. But in a nutshell, the Portrait pack is a lot more, has a lot more warmth to it in the undertones. And the Fuji pack is a much cooler and more of a kind of, it's got like a red magenta base or a cyan blue base, not red and magenta, cyan and blue base. So it gives you those like nice, cool pastel-y like foliage and skin. Fuji has a huge effect on green. Green gets really like bluish. That's kind of one of the distinctive things about it. And yeah, there's other things too, but I don't know. Just get both. It's like only having one lens. Like they're good for different things. There's no like one ring to rule them all or one preset to rule them all. You know, a few tools are good. Isfan asks, is this live show will be recorded to watch later? Yes. It'll be in the Mastin Labs community, so just join that and you can watch it later. Here's my last question, I'll move on. Aaron Audrey Dorsey asks, when you edit an image with Fuji or Portrait, then change it to black and white, do you go back to the original import before adding the black and white preset, or just add the black and white over the color preset? Okay, so if I was just to hit black and white up here, I am just turning the Fuji 400H preset into a black and white version, which is not the same as if I had instead just gone to, let me see here, the Ilford pack, for example, and done like, I don't know, like Delta 3200. So if I hit that, we're now like starting over completely from scratch. The previous preset has no bearing on this. It's completely replaced. So I hope that helps. And it actually looks really cool with Delta 3200. This image is got enough like big open spaces that you can see the grain well, and it looks good. Okay. All right, let's keep moving on. So this is from Melissa Glenn, and she asked for me to use the Portrait Push pack, and this is a Nikon file. So the last few were Canon. So here's the Portrait Push pack. I am just going to, let's see. Let's just start with Portrait 400 plus 1 on this one. So that's just one click, Portrait 400 plus 1. This image, even before I applied it, I mean, it's just, the white balance is very cool. So after applying it, I'm going to warm it up just a little bit here with the temperature slider. And I'm also going, I mean, if you like kind of a darker, moodier look, then I would, you know, maybe just warm it up even a little more and just leave it alone, if that's your preference. There's a lot of orange being reflected. I'm assuming it's from some other part of this building into her face. We can try to counteract that a little bit with maybe dropping the temperature and adding a little magenta. No, I don't know. There's some kind of funky reflection, but it still doesn't look bad. Now, if it was my edit, I mean, like the way I normally would edit, I would do Fuji 400 or Portrait 400 plus 1, and I always kind of tend to go a little bit brighter, so I would just increase the exposure a tiny bit. Yeah, I can't really settle on the right white balance for this. There's some kind of weird, I mean, parts of it are perfect, like her hand and everything are great, and then we're getting what I can only assume to be an orange reflection from some other part of the building, like on parts of her face. But still, it looks really nice. This is, so we'll go, so that's straight out of camera, and that is with Portrait 400 plus 1. Let's do, I don't know, let's try Portrait 160 plus 1. So small change there. Portrait 160 plus 2. We're getting a little more of that red kind of shadow area. This actually looks really nice. Among myself and a few of my friends, we've kind of all fallen in love with Portrait 160 plus 2 out of everything. And I don't know, it's just got a really cool look. So thank you so much, Melissa, for sending us this photo. It's really nice. All right, let me answer 2 more questions here. So Karina asks, how do you deal with people with 2 different types of skin tone? One of the girls was just regular blonde girl with regular skin tone, and the guy was redhead and his skin was reddish. I couldn't work out one way for these 2. Well, I mean, you are dealing with reality. If 2 people have different skin tones, you can be totally accurate. I mean, you could just shoot film and it would be totally accurate, but you would still probably, I mean, there's nothing in the world that would make their skin tones look the same. So if the guy has like a red skin tone or just kind of a pink undertone, that's just how he is. You could try to balance it out by adding green with a tint slider, but then the other person would probably start to look green. So I don't know, that's a tough one. There's nothing wrong with actually letting people look how they look. I mean, if your skin is a little bit pink, that's how you look. Not everyone has the same skin tone, but I get it. You want to like try to get the best look for both. So yeah, I would just pick something in the middle. You could even pick some other object in the photo somewhere that you know to be neutral and adjust for that, and then let everything else like fall where it falls, and that'll be the most realistic. But I hope that helps. Okay, so Joe Kim asks, what if you shoot aperture priority will be harder to edit with the presets? Nope, aperture priority has no bearing on the presets whatsoever. The presets just adjust color and contrast. Aperture priority is just changing the depth of focus in your photo, so like how far back things are in focus, so they don't actually relate to each other. If you're trying to get like that soft, I don't know, something like this, right? Like where the foreground is really in focus and the background just kind of gets buttery and, you know, gets blurry. Yeah, it does really make a difference. You can't, you know, if you're shooting at f/16, you won't get this look, but it doesn't really have any bearing on the presets. So let me see. Emma asks, do the presets stack? No, they do not stack. They replace each other. Okay, on to Dante Velasquez's photo. Thank you for sending this in. I picked it because it was just, I don't know, it's strangely unusual, and I was just excited to see what it looked like edited. He wanted me to use the Portrait pack. So I think for this one, I'm going to use both the Portrait and Portrait Push pack, and you guys can see the difference. Let's just start with the normal Portrait pack. So let's just do Portrait 400. Okay, I'm going to do lens correction because I can see this is really vignetted. And then it definitely needs an exposure boost and temperature boost. I mean, it's really cool and very dark. So I'm going to increase the exposure. I'm going to warm it up considerably. Don't fear the temperature or exposure slider. You can do whatever the hell you want with those sliders. You could go crazy. You could go like that if you wanted, or like that. You're not going to break Lightroom. So sometimes I feel like people are really, really scared. I'm not talking to you, Dante, but just in general. They wonder like, why can't I get this bright, airy look or this dark and moody look? And really, just like jerk those sliders around a little bit. You are not going to break anything. Just do it. Find out what looks good. And anyway, in the middle of jerking this slider around, I think like about right here, it looks really nice for this photo. So that's with Portrait 400, exposure bump, 1.35 stops, a little bit temperature increase. I'm going to drag a graduated neutral density filter down from the top. So I think the sky is really cool. I mean, cool as in it's rad, not cold. And I wanted to bring it in a little bit. So I'm going to drop the exposure down just a tiny bit. Oh yeah, see, isn't that nice? That is so nice. So this is no neutral density filter, and this is with the neutral density filter. So that is an edit with Portrait 400, just straight up simple adjustments. Let's go to the before. So that's the before, and that is the after. Now I'm going to edit it with the push pack. So I'm going to do Portrait 400, but the push one. All right, and I'm just going to apply the push pack, and there you go. That's a pretty good representation of how different the normal pack and the push one are. So here is normal Portrait 400, and then if you were to push the film, the actual film, or use the push preset, you're really kind of increasing the contrast quite a bit. Totally different looks, and they both look nice. So it's kind of like whatever floats your boat. If you want kind of a softer look, go with the regular pack. If you want something that's going to kind of punch you in the face, but look really like grittier, a fashion look, the Portrait Push Pack is awesome too. Okay. All right, let's see here. Emma asked a follow-up question about people underexposed to save the highlights and will sometimes overexpose to save the shadows. Is there any truth to this method? Yeah, but I mean, I don't know when it went out of style, but like, it's totally cool to just expose normally. Like that's what the camera manufacturers intended for you to do, is just to get the exposure like right in the middle. You will have plenty of dynamic range, like more than film in a lot of cases, if you just expose right in the middle. That's my recommendation. As you can kind of tell, it's a little pet peeve of mine that people think that there's some kind of magic formula if you over or underexpose, but there isn't. It doesn't matter. It only would matter if you're shooting JPEG. If you're shooting JPEG, then like you're really kind of like locking in the dynamic range right when you take the photo. But you're not. I mean, who the hell shoots JPEG anymore? I shoot JPEG like in Filmborn, our amazing iPhone app. That's free. You should check it out. But other than that, I mean, why? I don't know. Don't need to. So take advantage of RAW. Shoot right in the middle. I mean, maybe if you're like, if you flew out to the sun and you landed on the sun and you're standing on it, then yeah, maybe then I would like really underexpose to try to save some of the detail. But I mean, you don't need to. Anyway, that's my opinion. Okay. Emma again asks, my boyfriend is here, a huge black and white lover. Will you edit with any black and white? I did on a previous photo. Maybe I'll throw a black and white on another one here, but no one requested it. So this is kind of like what people requested. So if there is an image with no request, I'll do black and white for you. Nicholas asks, is there an Acros simulation in the future? Yeah, totally. Okay, let's move on. All right, here's our black and white image because there's nothing specified. So I believe this person asked for Portrait Push in the community, so I'll do that and then a black and white. So this is by Jennifer Ledette, and I am going to start with black and white as long as Emma Mills' boyfriend is still around watching. I don't want him to like leave and not see this, so I'm doing it for you, buddy, whatever your name is. So this is the Ilford black and white pack for Canon, and I'll just go through the different looks. So first of all, I got to just straighten the photo. Let me just get that out of the way. I cannot stand it when things are not straight. So a great photo. I mean, I shoot images that are like not straight all the time. No biggie. I just wanted to straighten this sucker out as much as I can. Okay, there we go. All right, so pan F. Looks really cool. Looks awesome. I mean, who doesn't like PanF? PanF is the best. I would do one little thing though, and this has nothing to do with preset or anything, but so if I just go back, here you can really see the definition of her hair because it's a different color. But when you apply a black and white preset, which doesn't see color, I mean, it doesn't show color obviously, you kind of lose some of her hair detail. So if I were to use PanF on this, I would probably take a brush and, you know, just bring out her hair just a little bit. If you hit if you hit Alt, it does like a negative amount. So I usually just kind of like paint on where I want to bring it out a little bit and then hit Alt, and then with a smaller brush just kind of you know, back up and remove some of the extra dodging. I'm going to be the first to admit I'm not the best at dodging and burning. I don't do it a ton. I try not to shoot where I need it, but I just wanted to kind of point out that, there we go. Just like a tiny little adjustment like that will really bring out her hair. And if I was to like take away that adjustment brush, so just check this out. It's just a tiny change. Here. It's a tiny, tiny change, but like, okay, here is no brush, and here is brush, and it just brings out her hair. Okay, enough about that. That's not super interesting. So that's PanF. Here's HP5. It's a little bit more of a middle contrast preset. I think it looks really great. It's really great for like photojournalism. And then we've got Delta 3200, which is our grainy, glowy, super cool black and white preset. Works great on images where there isn't too much in focus or really sharp because it's got a lot of grain. I'll go back to PanF real quick. So here's PanF. This would be a cool image to try some of the filters on. So we've included red, yellow, and green black and white filters that work just the same as if you were using an optical glass filter with black and white film. And they filter out different parts of the spectrum to make certain colors lighter most of the time. So for example, the red filter, basically, I mean, it's hard to pinpoint exactly what changed the most, but almost the entire image changed in tone. So this is no red filter. This is red filter. A green filter will make anything that's green in the image really, really bright. Increases the kind of the perceived luminance. So if I hit green, you'll see a lot of the green elements in the photo turn bright. And then the yellow filter is really made for skin. So you saw her skin kind of like really glow after using the yellow filter. So I think this looks really good with the yellow filter, to be honest. So I'm gonna leave it. So there is my black and white edit for Emma Mills's Boyfriend. Hope you enjoyed it. Okay, Carrie asks, how many presets come in your Fuji Pro pack? Do I answer you? I mean, you can look at the website or the product page, but I will tell you, it comes with 2 variations of Fuji 400H. So the second so there's the regular 400H, which is one of my favorite films of all time. And the second, the variation on it, and it's the only time we will ever do a not true film exactly, is a variation that I created, and it took a long time, but gives you the Fuji 400H look that everybody wants, even when you're in the wrong light. So if you're in like a bright golf course at noon and the grass is like neon, even if you're shooting real 400H, like the actual film, it would look like neon soup. And the Fuji 400H blue, like the kind of special one that I made, is to make even that crappy green look like the beautiful Jose Villa green, like the, you know, like sage. If you were to go buy a sage, like a, I don't know, like sage green, like that really nice green. And then the last kind of major base preset in the Fuji pack is the 160 NS, which is a film that's only really sold in Japan that I really like, and it's got a lot of saturation. It's just a really beautiful, cool, saturated film. It's like the opposite of 400H. Okay, so Emma's boyfriend's name is James. So hey, James. Okay, moving on. We're gonna do the push pack now. Same image. It's gonna look totally different. Let me just reset it here. I can't stand crooked images. Okay, Portrait 160+1 looks awesome. I mean, you basically don't even really need to do anything. Maybe I would like crop it in a little bit. I like those columns in the background, so I'm going to try to keep those. And then I would probably warm it up just a tiny bit. But yeah, and this is what I'm really proud to say is why the Fuji or the Portrait Push Pack is so wonderful, is that we're able to give you a moody look that isn't muddy. So it's got the three-dimensional look of film and the micro contrast of film, and you still have a black point and a white point, and you've got clean skin, but it's still got that moody, darker look, and that was not easy to do. But anyway, so that's 160+1. This is Portrait 160+2. You can really see the red kind of come in the darker areas, like the shadows down here. So if I back up for a second, this is just Portrait 160+1 stop. If you push it 2 stops, you start to introduce a bit of a red shift in the shadows. This is Portrait 400+1. Looks fantastic. That's probably what I would go with this image. Her lips really pop. Looks really good. For Portrait 400+2, and then we're going to do Portrait 800+1 and Portrait 800+2. But I would do the 400+1. Looks super nice. All right. So let me see. Any more questions here before I go on? Okay. Karina wants me to edit the picture of the one with the baby and the difficult lighting. Great idea. Let's do that one. So this is from Cassidy Woodard. Really nice photo. Great people in it. Challenging lighting situation. It may not look challenging at first glance, but it is, because what we've got is like kind of a harsh overhead midday, like overcast. We get that a lot in Seattle, like all the time, where it's like bright out, but you can't see the sun. And what happens is you get uneven lighting. So I've not even edited this yet, but I just want to point out that like her eyes, like kind of where her face is pretty dark compared to where her baby's face is. And even the baby's eyes are kind of in shadow because of, your skull creates shadow, like your eyes are inset, and that's just something that's hard to deal with if the light's coming straight down on you. So we'll do our best. She wanted Fuji 400H. Is this a Canon file? Okay, so it was sent in as a DNG, so I had to check. So we're going to do 400H. So this is 400H neutral. This is a great candidate for the altered 400H that I created, the 400H blue. You can see the green is kind of getting neon, and that's just because it's a high overcast day. This is a very saturated grass right here, very, very saturated, and it has a lot to do with the light. So if we do 400H neutral, it's a little bit neon. 400H blue kind of knocks it down to a much nicer green. So we're going to just do that. I'm going to increase the temperature a little bit. They're a little bit cool. And then, I don't know if you can see this watching this or not, but this image is a little bit magenta. And the thing that really tipped me off that it's magenta is by looking at her shirt. I know that the shirt is probably not kind of purple. It's probably gray. So that kind of gives me a really nice guide to figure out, where to adjust it from here. So I'm going to drop the temperature a little bit, or the tint towards green, until I kind of neutralize just a little bit of that shirt. So I'm not going to take it all the way out because there's some green reflection in her face from the grass, and that's a little bit too much, but just a little bit, like to -4. And then the next thing I'm going to do is like I was talking about where there's kind of an uneven lighting, like with her forehead and eyes. If you use all soft, it really helps to kind of balance it out. So it's starting to look better and better. And then the last thing I'm going to do here is use a neutral density filter adjustment thingy, and that's a little strong actually, but just try to knock the sky down just a little bit. You don't want it to look like she's wearing like a weird like shadowy hat thing. So if you go too far down, it looks crazy, but just like a little bit kind of really helps. And I might even crop this in a little bit too. I said earlier that 35 millimeter vertical is my least favorite ratio in like the whole world. So if I make it 4:3, like medium format film, and I put one of these intersecting like lines of interest like on her eye, that's going to be a much nicer crop in general. Yeah, and that's just a cropping thing, not a preset thing. And I'm going to go up in exposure just a tiny bit. So I did a little bit more work on this image than I would normally do, but that's because it's in challenging light, even if it doesn't look like it right off the bat. So this is before, and this is after. Okay, Josh Chang asked, do you apply the presets first before adjusting white balance and exposure? Yes, always. Preset comes first always. If you do all these other adjustments and then you use the preset, it's never going to look right, because the preset, each preset, when I last counted, has over 83 adjustments that happen, like when you apply it, and you just have to adjust white balance, temperature, and tint after you apply the preset. Super important. Rika asks, can you do this image on Portrait Push as well, the woman with her baby? Okay, let's see here. Yes, let's do that. So Portrait Pushed. This is going to be, I'm just going to start over, because editing with Portrait Push is going to be a whole different ball game than what I just did, because we were fighting contrast like this entire time. So to get her eyes to like not be super dark compared to her forehead, every step that I took in the previous edit was to kind of like even out the contrast throughout the image and keep it looking natural and real without looking like a gross HDR image. So starting over, and if I'm using Portrait Push is contrasty. That's like the whole thing about pushing film. I mean, it's one of the biggest things that happens. So we're going to have a whole different experience. As you can see, I just used Portrait 160 and the image is like mega contrasty. So I would not use the push pack on this one. The light is just not really great. Maybe if you use like all soft on it, I don't know. It's kind of a hot mess. I just don't think this is a good route to go for this image using the push pack. So, nothing is a magic bullet, whether it be film or digital. There's a reason that you have a tool for different situations. If this had a little bit of fill flash or something, or a reflector, yeah, the Portrait Push pack would look awesome, but it doesn't. So you need to treat it like gentle, like the most gentle thing in the world, and use the regular like Fuji or Portrait presets that don't have all that contrast added to them in this situation. All right, let's move on. Got a few more to do here, and then we got to wrap it up. So this is by Kaeli Wiltbank, who asked me to use Portrait or Fuji. So let's see here. This is a Canon file. All right, let's do both. So here is 400H. This is the Fuji 400H for Canon. Before I even applied this, I mean, again, talking about lighting situations, wherever they're standing, maybe they're under a skylight or something, there's already quite a bit of contrast difference here, like on her cheekbones and on his head, and on her hand. So we're going to be kind of working with this throughout this entire edit. So there's 400H. I would probably do, Yeah, it looks pretty good, all soft. Let's see what highlight soft looks like. I think highlight soft is better. Okay, so let me go back. This is 400H, just straight up applied to the straight out of camera image, and then I'm just gonna do highlight soft. So what just happened there is I'm knocking down the highlights, but I'm not touching the dark parts of the photo. And the reason I'm doing that is I just don't think this image would have enough pop if I tried to even it out too much. So the image right before this one where it's like super difficult lighting, yeah, I'm like pulling out every trick I've got to even it out. This one, the problem wasn't in the shadows, the problem was in the highlights. So all I did was highlight soft. Okay, so I applied that. And I increased the temperature just a tiny bit. Yeah, I think I would just leave it right there. Maybe drop the exposure just a tiny bit. Okay, and again, vertical 35mm, I can't do it, so I'm just gonna do my own little crop. It also makes his back look better. He's kind of like hunching over to kiss her, and I don't know, and it's a 35mm lens, so it's a little bit distorted. So this crop takes a little bit of his back muscle out, and it just, I don't know, it looks nicer to me. What do I know? Okay, so that's a Portra or a Fuji 400H on these two fine people. Let's see here, and I'm going to do the Portra, just regular straight up Portra. Let's do 160, and that is Portra 160. I'm going to do highlight soft again because that got canceled out. So there we go. So that is Portra 160, and I'll just kind of show you the two. So that's 400H, and that's Portra 160. The biggest change, at least in this image, there's not that many colors happening here. It's mostly just skin, and then the rest is neutral. But if you look, okay, so this is Fuji 400H, and then that is Portra 160. A little bit more yellow in the base tones here with the Portra films. Okay, and I don't know. Let's just try one more. Let's try the Portra push on this too, just for fun. I don't know, something totally different. Portra 160 plus 2. Yikes. Okay, let me just start over on that one. So Portra 160 plus 2. I'm going to take down the exposure a tiny bit. I'm going to crop it in a little bit. And wow, there's just too much contrast in this photo to begin with, but let's see here. Let's do shadow soft. Oh, that's not bad. Totally different look. Okay, moving on. All right. So Mastin Liang, I don't know if you're still watching or not. You were like the first person to show up. He wanted me, I'm assuming Mastin, I don't know. It's a really cool name, but I've never heard of it in my whole life, so I'm assuming it's a he. Thank you for sending this in. It's a Nikon file, and this person wanted me to use Portra pushed. So Mastin, you're a he. That's what I was thinking. Okay. You're the dude with you're like holding your wife or girlfriend like on your back in your photo. Okay, so Portra pushed for Nikon. So this image is, I mean, I'm not going to even put a preset on it yet. I'm just going to show you how I would edit it just by hand. This image is pretty dark. So, I mean, I would, increase the exposure, and I would also say that it's a little bit magenta, just looking at her skin. So I kind of fixed that. And that's just editing just by hand, okay? So now if I were to apply Portra 160, we're going to kind of land, about right. However, this contradicts what I just said. Like, you want to always put the preset on first. But I just wanted to show you the underlying adjustments that are necessary to get to here. So I'm going to start over. You should not do that. You should not do all these adjustments and then put the preset on. But I just wanted to show you what was, where this photo is really at. Because sometimes people will take a photo like this, and I'm not saying you do this, but they'll take a photo like this and be like, oh, the exposure is perfect. And it's not, because it's really dark. But your eyes kind of just get used to it, and you think like, oh, that's bright enough. And then you apply the preset, and you're like, oh, these presets suck. I hate them. I want my money back. What's going on? And the problem is that the photo just needs to be, have the exposure increased. So this is applying Portrait 160. Let's do actually Portrait 400 on this one. So there's Portrait 400, and then Portrait 400 plus 1, and then I'm going to increase the exposure and knock down the tint towards green a little bit. Not much, just a tiny bit. And that might even be too much, maybe like right about there. So yeah, that looks flippin' awesome, just like that. So this is before, and that is after. If you really wanted to, I can see the detail in a dress, but if you wanted to even kind of bring it out more, you could do like highlight soft, or what I would do in this case, because I like how much it pops everywhere else, I would just grab a brush and just tap a few times on her dress to kind of knock it down. Oops. Just like, yeah, about right there. Just doing some small little tweaks with exposure and stuff, but yeah, I think about right there is how I would edit it. So this is before, and that is after. Nice image. You are shooting in nice light, so it's not that hard. This is like Portrait 400 plus 2, just to give you a little different, so you can see the difference there. It's a little more contrasty. Okay. All right. Oh, your name is pronounced Mason. Interesting. Okay, cool. The second S really threw me. Okay, so Emma asks, is Mastin going to do a Kodak Ektar base pack? Yes, we are. Ektar is amazing. It can look totally different depending on how much you push it. So I'm debating whether to make it its own kind of special pack with all the looks possible of Ektar, or to combine it with a few other films into a pack. So we will get there. We will get there eventually, I promise. And then James wants to know if there will be a Kodak-based black and white pack. Yes. In fact, I've got a Tri-X pack that's about halfway done. And yeah, it's gonna be pretty special because I'm taking into account different developers. Like if you're using Rodinal, you're gonna get a different look than D76 or different ways of developing it. So it's a possibility. Nicholas Mueller asks, is shooting with auto ISO going to be an issue? Oh, he says, okay, let me redo that. He says, is shooting with auto white balance going to be an issue? No, but the problem, because you can change anything you want in RAW, it won't matter. It's just you're creating a lot of work for yourself, because if you shoot on manual everything all the time, the beauty of that is that even if you get 20 photos in a row in the same situation, like a little bit off, if they were all shot at the exact same setting, if you adjust one of them to be perfect and apply it to the rest, you're going to have perfect photos. But if you have auto white balance where they're each a little bit different, then you can't do that. You have to go to each single photo and start fixing it, and especially if your exposure's off. I recommend just sticking to 1 or 2 white balance settings for the entire day. I do daylight for everything until I'm inside, and then I do tungsten. I don't expect it to look perfect right in Lightroom. All I want is just a starting point to where all the photos are very similar in exposure and white balance, so that if you just fix one, you've fixed them all. That's just the way I work. Some people dial in white balance looking at live view on the back. That works really good too. Okay, let's see. What time is it here? It's 3 o'clock. I have to go, guys, really soon. I have physical therapy for my back. Yes, it's what happens when you get older. I wanted to do one more photo just because it's so damn cool. I don't even know what's going on, but this is like mega cool. So bravo, Francis Betty, for taking a chance and doing something I haven't seen. It's really cool. There's absolutely no indication of what you want me to use for the presets, so I'll just pick whatever I want. And I'm going to do, since this is a Canon file, I'm going to do something with the new pushed ones. So here is Portrait 160 plus 1. That looks just super cool, period. I would maybe do shadow soft and maybe increase exposure just a tiny bit. That looks just awesome. All right, let's see before and after. This is before, and that is after. Looks so cool. I barely had to do anything. Maybe I would increase the temperature just a tiny bit. I don't know, it depends on what you want. Maybe really cool would look, yeah, I don't know. I think this would look really cool with a cooler white balance. I would take a brush and just pop it like one time on this person's back. Like if I was gonna print this for an art show or something, I would just, knock down the exposure just a tiny bit on her back. But that looks really cool. Here's Portrait 800 plus 2. Also looks cool. I don't know, I just can't lose with this photo. Yeah, so yeah, looks rad. See if lens correction will help with this at all. Holy cow. Okay, so this is, all right guys, so this is my last trick of the day. So this was shot with a 35mm 1.4 lens. Great lens to have, awesome. Whether it be the Sigma Art one or the Canon one or whatever. The problem with shooting at 1.4 is you have a lot of vignetting and you might not even know it. So if you click on the lens correction tool that comes with all the presets, look at this. It's like turning on the lights. It's crazy. That is the amount of vignetting in the 35mm lens when you shoot it wide open. So if I did do lens correction, I would probably take the exposure down a little bit. So yeah. Anyway, very cool. I got to get going. See if I can answer any more questions. Josh asks, is there a way to copy and paste the same edit to multiple photos that have similar look? Yeah, you just, I don't know, like you would, so I edited this photo and then I would, select these photos and hit sync and hit check all and synchronize them, and they're all going to have the same, whatever I just did to this photo is going to happen to those photos. So that's how you copy and paste and edit. Last question, let me see here. Emma asks, how do the film presets look like on actual film? Some people do that. So if you get like a really crappy scan, so say you shot Portrait 400 and you had it scanned at like Walgreens or somewhere. I've seen people take those crappy scans and then put the Mastin Labs Portrait 400 preset on top of them. And what happens is you're kind of like energizing or supercharging the film look that's in there in the bad scan and bringing out a better film look, and it looks pretty cool. It's not part of the the Canon, like the holy word of how the presets are supposed to be used by any means, but I think it's really cool if people play with them and do new things. So yeah, it can look really good. Hey Robbie Cappy, you just joined us. I'm about to sign off, but c'est la vie, à la prochaine, Robbie. Yeah, I got to get to my doctor. So hope you guys enjoyed this. Again, the sale ends on May 22nd at midnight. You can find me and the rest of the Mastin Labs crew in the Mastin Labs community on Facebook. Just, if you're not already part of it, join, and we'll let you in as soon as possible. And yeah, we do these videos as often as we can, and they're always with community photos. So please send us your photos, and we'll keep editing. So thank you guys. I'm going to sign off, and I hope you all have a great day.